Hello and welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie. Y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sitting here and just kind of reminding myself of what a blessing this is to have a show, to go live every single day, to have folks in the chat. I almost said a community. I haven't officially launched a community. We've been working towards this over the last month, and it's been kind of slow going, but oh no, my phone alarm's going off. Hold on. I have to call somebody after this. But I almost said it's such a blessing to have a community, and we haven't officially launched it yet. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But even still, the conversations that we have in the chat, the conversations and dialogue and the questions and just the quality of us interacting together. Y'all, I've grown as a result tremendously by way of learning from y'all and hearing your thoughts and all of us just kind of sharing our own life experience. There really is something to that. I really believe experience is one of the greatest teachers. Today we were driving through Maine, and we started just researching kids who really made either scientific discoveries, made art, became prodigies in the arts. And I'm sitting here with my darlings boys. They're 9 and 11, and we were just kind of studying these people who have really become not just iconic, but have really become the greatest of their own potential, and then made colossal change globally, much less so, just allowing for themselves to live to the fullest of their own ability. And so on the Knowing Show, we talk about the cultivation of our own internal life, to cultivate our minds, our bodies, our souls, our spirits. And when each one is activated, each one is cultivated, then we actually try to seek to be integrated. And it's hard work to cultivate each one in isolation, but it's even harder to live integrated. One of the stories that we were reading tonight was a 14-year-old boy was plowing his field, and then all of a sudden he just dreamed up this concept that turned into and evolved into the technology necessary for television. I had no idea. And the fact is that there's so much ingenuity and creativity in the mind of children, because they have yet to, for some of them, they have yet to experience kind of the weight of self-consciousness, of how am I showing up and what are people going to think, and do I fit in, am I wanted, am I loved, until we reach a certain point in our lives. And I think all of us do. We wake up, so to say, in this kind of realization of our own nakedness, in one sense, where we start seeing ourselves as other people do, or we start seeing ourselves as culture deems. So we see the mirror, or maybe it's even the standard that culture holds, whether it's through looking at a magazine, or it's looking at a picture, or it's hearing somebody talking about the ideal that is not you. Then we slowly start to wake up and realize we're naked. And in becoming self conscious, there's a big difference between being self conscious versus being self aware. We start realizing that we are not that which they deem the ideal. And who even is the ideal? I have a theory, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but I just have a theory that underneath, almost all of us have a similar experience of wondering if we're enough. Each one of us has a similar experience of feeling lonely at the end of the day sometimes. Each one of us just wants, like, the very, very human need of love. And just because you might look like the ideal from the outside, it doesn't actually mean that you're satiated on the inside and you're satisfied and you're fulfilled. And so when we're kind of asking ourselves this question that we're looking at tonight, why can't I feel peace? I think that there's a reality that we're looking for it out there. We're outsourcing our peace, we're outsourcing our joy, we're outsourcing our meaning, our fulfillment. And so when we start kind of, okay, realizing, like, okay, let me come back home. So there's this concept, we've talked about this before, of peeling off, like peeling back the layers like an onion to get to the core nucleus of who you and I are. But to even be able to do that, We actually need to start even like, okay, let me even get to the concentric circle that is me to begin with. Because there is no way you and I can begin peeling back the layers of our own selves to go inward and understand, what do I believe? What do I really think? What is my opinion? What is my experience? For us to be able to understand that, we actually have to first weed through the excess noise of other people's opinions, their expectations, what they've modeled for us, to then be able to come to the truth of what even is going on for me to begin with. And so, as we start asking these questions, we start realizing how much we have doled out to other people. And a lot of times it looks like kind of giving people permission and giving people, yeah, giving people permission over ourselves. Like, though, in the way that that manifests is, I'm metaphorically, I'm going to go and sit in your experience rather than sitting in mine. I am going to choose to look at the world through your eyes rather than my own. And I am going to choose to look at myself through your eyes, through your standards of success, through culture and society standards of success. So now my judgment stick ends up being the very thing that is popular opinion, that is perhaps the ideal in the magazine. And I say magazine because it's just kind of this colloquial term that is picking up the phone and scrolling on social media, and what are you seeing? What are we not measuring up to? I just want to jump here in the chat. Jody girl, I'm glad to see you. It's been a while. I love this. This is so brilliant. The peace God gives us is the ceasefire between God and ourselves. That is the greatest weight off our shoulders. That is the peace we seek between us and God. No peace compares to that. But y'all, we cannot get to that level of peace between us and God until we have stripped off and removed the excess noise. There really is so much noise where like a clattering for attention. There's just so many people like waving their hands and waving their flags and seeking to get attention from us and for us. And it's not just other people, it's brands. That's exactly what these brands are paying millions and millions, billions of dollars collectively to do, which is to steal and capture our attention. Where we place our attention is where we place our energy. So if our energy is being expended towards the external and what everyone else thinks, what their metrics of success are, then there's no energy left over for us to be able to then go inward and start peeling back the layer. It's like, think of concentric circles. We've got the outer circle, and then you go in deeper, and then you go in deeper still, and finally you'll get to the nucleus. And that nucleus is where the peeling of the onion begins. And then in the onion is when we kind of get to the core center of you and me, of, well, who really am I? Who was I created to be in the first place? And until we really start taking radical responsibility to start shutting out that proverbial noise, and maybe it's not a complete shutting off. I'm not talking about being drastic here, but what I'm talking about is making intentional choices, living aware. We talked about this earlier. There's a big difference between being self-conscious versus being self-aware. I lived self-conscious for about 20 years. I remember being 8 to 9 years old when I started feeling not really wanted by a particular friend group. And then I remember being 12 years old where I was rejected by the first boy. And I really remember that was kind of like a time when I felt like I kind of woke up and became self-conscious. I was like, oh, I'm actually not enough. Like, I'm in that case with that. He was 14 and I was 12. And in that case, I was too young, was not enough. And ever since that point of being 12 years, and even earlier before that, I remember being 10 years old and feeling like I was physically too big. I matured into my body, and just being completely honest, I was sitting next to these middle school boys, and my knees were like twice the size of theirs, and I felt too big. So I was too big, and then I was too young, and then I was too much. Anything that you can put "too" in front of TOO and then insert adjective Man, y'all, that is someone else's opinion. That is us measuring ourselves against theirs. And the thing is, everyone has a different opinion. So we will never be enough. And how then can we ever find peace? Because we will fundamentally forever be broken or fundamentally forever not be enough. So, in order for us to ever try to capture and even achieve that level of peace that Jody Girl is talking about here, that peace of God gives us is a ceasefire between God and ourselves. And there is something where gaze is directed upward to say, finally, I am reorienting my gaze from the right and to the left, from looking east and west. It's like a broken compass. My compass is fundamentally navigating horizontally rather than vertical, pointing north, until I reorient my gaze and say, all right, who do you say that I am? Now that's when the ceasefire begins. It's like that's the moment when it's like, oh, now I'm becoming self-aware, aware of the self that I was intended to become in the first place. And it starts sometimes self-awareness to be able to get to our own ability to walk in the fullness of that true self of who we were created to be in the beginning, comes with an awareness of our current state of the self. And to be able to get to that point, we must have an understanding and awareness of the self from which we came. So it's understanding the past, it's understanding the present, and it's getting to the future, to getting to the point of or even the ability to something new. We talked about this the other day on the show, to move from replicating then allows us to get to recreating, creating something new, recreating something of our own ideal based on that vertical compass pointing north against what everyone else might even say. Y'all, here's the thing, and I think each one of us needs to ask this question. Are we willing? And even as I say this, I'm like, oh gosh, I hate this question. And we have to answer it. Are we willing to experience the ostracization, being ostracization? Are we willing to be ostracized? Are we willing to not be wanted? That's a core human need, to be wanted, to be loved, to belong. And are we willing to experience that? Because the reality is, and this is where I kind of tie in the business understanding with my own personal journey of really coming to know who I am, because as I've done the work to really help companies know who they are, I've been like, oh my gosh, the way you run a business is actually the way you need to run your personal life. You need to have a mission. You need to have a mission for your personal life. What are your values as a business? Well, what are the values that will serve as guardrails for your life personally? From the friendships that you create, that inform the time you wake up in the morning, that inform the time you go to bed, that inform the usage of time, inform what TV you watch, which shows you watch, what music you listen to, what podcasts you subscribe to. Every single decision we make is predicated in our value system that ultimately, at the end of the day, is informed by our very beliefs of the way that we view the world. And apart from intentional examination, and thus, after examination, we can then create something new. So apart from intentional creation, intentional examination, we're more than likely relying on these old belief systems based on what was modeled for us, based on what people said and what was iterated and what was done. Here's the thing that I think can be most damaging is when the words and the actions don't line up. Then it's okay, well, what in the heck is real? And that was incongruent as children. There's a high likelihood it's going to be incongruent for us as in adulthood. Y'all, I have this, and I want to be careful here. Until we can all acknowledge our own propensity for darkness, I think it's going to continue to catch us by surprise. If we recognize, for so our light is so great the shadow, then we can prepare for it. We can the tools to curb it. We can put in self-established boundaries and protect us from it. Aware, my darling has choice, and they have a mother, and they love her, and I'm just so keenly aware of the darkness, and this is something that I think is even vulnerable to say, because I know that there will probably be everybody has an. I am just so aware of the darkness of being what could be potentially being a stepmom. There's gonna be propensity and temptation for darkness there, whether it's getting jealous of loves them, whether it's angry because if they're not my children, perhaps I won't have the same amount of patience as their own mother. So I'm now looking at this precious, beautiful role of being stepmom that hasn't happened yet I am intentional. I need to be today in order to be that woman. What guardrails do I need to put in place? What do I need to study? I was listening to a podcast the other day on little boys, and like I'm 10 years old. There's so much data that proves that little boys at 10 years old don't feel known. That is devastating to me. So looking at his 11-year-old son, and I'm like, but I wouldn't have known that if I were intentionally looking for how do I avoid this darkness and this, even avoid, how do I prepare for how do I anticipate the darkness? In preparation, who we need to become in order to become our own ideal. So if we don't have clarity on our own ideal, then it is going to be fundamentally possible for us to walk into it. So if we become aware, not just of our own potential for darkness, but if we are not aware of our own ideal, antithesis of that darkness, there is no way that we could ever achieve that. So when we think about that which we're replicating, what was modeled for us is the example set for us to move to recreating. That's usually a 180 step. Maybe it's not a complete 180. Maybe it's a 90 degree, it's a 1 degree change, but it's definitely not more than 180 because now you're starting to get back to the behaviors that were there before. So if I'm not aware of where am I starting today to where do I want to get to, and all of me to put into place to get there, and it's not, I say this for my own sake as well as anyone's, it's not about controlling the process, but it's about simply being aware of it. Again, there's a big difference between being self-aware. Self is the current state of the self, the future state of the self, of who I want to be, and then the former state of the self. The past is to understand the present and prepare for the future, because if I'm not aware of it, it will probably sneakily come up and it will slightly color and cloud my ability to even look at the future and create my own ideal for it. Let me just jump over into the chat. AT Marlboro says, screen is blurring. Now your audio is lagging. Bummer. Marco says, live imaging, guys. Oh, it's lagging. Boo. Emotional compass to help point you. It's so good. Oh, Robert says, the topic is right on. It's good, but the bad note is that your camera keeps coming in and out of focus. Well, let me close out some tabs. That might help. I do have a lot of tabs open. Let me view. I'm in Maine right now and definitely a little bit out in where it's technically a cabin that we're staying in. So let me close out a few of these tabs. Did that help at all? Oh no, everyone says that everything's skipping. Darkness will enhance the light, so therefore dark dull Stephen. That's so good. Marco says, looks like a live stream from one of those satellites sent to observe an asteroid. Busy's here. Hello, y'all. I will if the Wi-Fi. I'll go ahead and offer tonight. Maybe I'll try to do the show tomorrow from like a coffee shop. That's always scary to me, but I am staying in the same Airbnb tomorrow as well as today. So let me try to do tomorrow's live stream from a coffee shop. In the meantime, thank you all so much for joining. I will go read today's Course in Miracles on your own. The lesson, though, is the peace of God is shining in me now. And y'all, that's the goal. Jody Girl nailed it right at the beginning. She says, and I read it, and then we'll go ahead and hop off. She says, the peace of God gives us, or the peace God gives us is the ceasefire between God and ourselves. This is the greatest weight off our shoulders. That is the peace we seek between us and God. No peace compares to that. So with that, Jody Girl, thank you. It's good to see your name. Brian, I'm so happy to see your name tonight. I'm so glad you're here. Brian J. Eric, thank you for joining. James, 18 Mawborn, thank you for joining. Y'all have a wonderful night. I'm sorry my camera's blurry and my internet is terrible. I will try to I'll try to go to a coffee shop tomorrow and hopefully I'll have better luck. So in the meantime, have a wonderful night. I will see you tomorrow. Talk soon. Oh, and by the way, before we jump off, if you subscribe notifications, because I know I wanted to go live every day this week and I've never traveled with kids before. And I'm realizing how much everything is kind of shot to the wind while doing so. And it's been fun and also very unpredictable. So if you turn on notifications, then you can know when we're going live somewhat in advance. I'm trying to do better, but